Hey there, how's it going, Mark?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
Very good. Good to see you.
Yeah, and you?
You were out last week, right?
Yes, I
Anything
was, but
interesting
I've
going on?
managed to watch it. I managed to watch the playback today, so it was interesting.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, it turned into quite an interesting discussion, actually.
Yeah, yeah, and I you're talking about Clubhouse, and it's just blowing up. The number of people that are now involved in it is increasing as we go. Like it's
Yeah, I think
crazy.
they're picking up 20,000 new users every hour now. So I think they're close to 6 million now.
Yeah, it's like some of the groups I've steered away from the larger groups
Yeah,
just because there's so much talk and there's so much of the same stuff that's going on. So I've started going to the smaller groups and being able to interact a lot
hmm
better with
right.
people on there, and it's like you get like the mega thought leaders, content providers singing these hymn tunes, and you can go and see people who have got like millions of followers but just aren't the household names, and they can give just as much value, probably even more
Right.
than,
Right.
than the big thought leaders are.
Yeah, there's a big, big snowstorm here.
Oh, yeah? Oh, is that what that is? Nobody's vacuuming in the background?
Yeah, right.
I actually I have a busy day on Mondays. We have a ton of snow on the ground here. We went
Oh,
sledding
nice.
with my 3-year-old yesterday,
Yeah.
which was awesome. And I literally just went outside and played in the snow for 10 minutes between my between my appointments.
So we had snow last weekend, last Sunday. Not the Sunday just gone, the Sunday before. And my kids are 4 and 6, nearly 5 and 7, and they'd never seen snow. And
Right.
it was like the first time in their lives. And
Wow.
literally we built a snowman, we threw snowballs, we did like it was like for them it was the most exciting day of their lives. It really was. It was amazing.
That's awesome. I'm gonna say hi to Kirsten here. Um, if you want to say hi, you can. We're just chit chatting because we all know each other, but we're gonna get started with the session here in a minute. If you want to say hi and introduce yourself, you can. If not, you can just be a fly on the wall. We do like to tailor these sessions to the folks that are attending, so feel free to speak up at any time or say something in the chat. I will give an introduction and then we'll dive in deeper a little bit here. So you have found your way to the Business Podcast Mastermind. This started with a few talented friends in the business and podcasting space who expanded it to create a weekly event where a wider audience can join. We have a few folks that are co-hosts, among them Rob Green-Lee. He's the VP of Content and Partnerships at Libsyn, chair of the Podcast Academy, co-host of the New Media Show, and longtime evangelist in the podcasting industry. Also a big fan of or intrigued by Clubhouse quite a lot lately. Vinay Koshi also joins us sometimes. He's not here today. Host of the Predictable B2B podcast, founder of Sproutworth. He helps others achieve predictable business growth and influence through content marketing. And I'm Ethan Janney. Did I forget Henry Lopez? Henry Lopez, a serial entrepreneur, small business coach, and host of the top-rated How of Business podcast, dedicated to helping others start, run, and grow their small businesses. And I'm Ethan Janney, business and executive coach and co-host of the Run With It podcast. We invite 7+ figure entrepreneurs to share business ideas and the action steps to launch them. And today what we're going to do is, last week we were actually supposed to have a guest, Mark Asquith, who's going to talk about podcasting and building influence. It turned into quite an interesting discussion covering many topics. And then typically what we do after I guess as we discuss what that guest's topic. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive just a little bit deeper here today as well. Unfortunately, because Mark couldn't join us last week, he had a sickness in the family, nothing COVID related, but he's also unable to join us this week. So we'll just continue with our typical rhythm, and we'll have a guest on again next week. But what I'd like to do is focus us in the beginning, and if we go off the rails into something more interesting to everybody, then we can. But I think a really interesting focus that we touched upon last week was preparation for podcasting. And in particular, I'll throw out a few things, a few themes that I've been finding in the past few months and weeks, and I think has been helpful in improving the quality of our podcasts. And also maybe it's a different angle than what other people are taking. Take it or leave it if you think it's useful, but it might be something you're not as familiar with. So one thing I just want to call out is what we've been doing before each podcast episode is doing our research, and it's not just kind of about the guest and doing about them. And partly that has to do with the fact that we have our guests bring on a business idea. So we do research about that business idea. But I think you can apply this methodology no matter what type of podcast show that you host. What we do is we try to, at least I've been doing, when I do research, I try to kind of create little snippets that I know that I can add in during the show that are on topic and relevant, that are going to add some value to the viewer, or the listener. And those things can be insights like, oh, an article just came out that says this or that, or, if you didn't already know, there's a study that says, if you do this, then you'll get this result. Stories. So particularly in our situation, as we've been experimenting, I've learned what a story means in our context, what a good story means. And that story, because we're an entrepreneurial podcast trying to inspire people to start businesses, tends to be, here's a story of XYZ person. This is where they were kind of before they encountered this idea that they came up with, and here's how they started to explore it a little bit, and here's where they are at now, typically involving a call out of the numbers involved, because people like to hear numbers that give them something concrete to latch onto. So, I could say, I gave this same example last week. Nathan Lotka, he found a Chrome plugin that had a lot of ratings but hadn't been updated for a year, and it was free, and he found a way to get in touch with the developer. He offered to buy that free plugin. Then he put up a paywall within a couple of weeks and started charging the users of that plugin. And then he used the money that he got from that revenue to grow the business. And now he has a $6,000 a month revenue stream coming from this plugin that he got for, just a matter of thousands of dollars. So just telling a story like that, which kind of gives the arc, and actually maybe somebody could think about how to do it. There's other ways you could tell little stories. So there's a couple of examples, and what I'll actually do is I'll notate the story, and I'll try to massage it a little bit so that it fits our format. And then I don't read it directly during the episode, but it's just kind of nice. I know that if it's sort of on topic with whatever we're talking about, I can say, oh yeah, by the way, you might have heard of XYZ and this is what happened. I can be accurate with the numbers, and I can make sure it's tailored to be inspirational in the way I want it to be. So those are a couple examples, but I know I've been talking for a little bit. Anybody have any thoughts? Have you tried stuff like this? I know, Rob, you and Todd Cochran might bring in articles or something like that for your podcast. Any other approaches?
Yeah, I just think big picture, if you want to build a loyal audience that keeps coming back to your content, I think you have to build themes around your episodes, and build big concepts that can utilize keywords, keyword phrases that can get you found in the search, Google and Bing and those places that can get you found, and basically come up with a bigger topic, right? And then go after that bigger topic and expand on it yourself as the host, and then bring in guests to add more depth and clarity to that topic. Creates a show that has a lot of value and connects with the audience, and it is able to be marketed out there as a digital product, right? That people can search for and find if they have an interest in it. So, I think that's how I think about the radio show that I did for many years. I was building topics in the program that were theme driven, that I could drive audiences to various topics that I could use keywords. So that's one way to think about it. It just depends on the kind of show that you're trying to create too. Some shows don't lend themselves quite as much to that kind of a strategy.
Yeah, the way that you're saying it too, that reminds me of another thing I've been experimenting with lately is after I research the guests and after I come up with some
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm going to throw in, I try to think of what would be the most attractive title given
Right.
our audience to
Mm-hmm.
this particular podcast episode. And just, it doesn't have to be what the final title is, but if I keep that now in mind,
Right.
as I'm organizing what we talk about, as I say things, as I lead the conversation, it more than can support the title. So a good example was we just had Tyler King, who built a successful software business called Less Annoying CRM, all the way to $3 million a year in revenue. And his business idea that he brought in was, it seemed really simple. It was like it was meeting notes. It was just like a Google reminder in your email to take notes for a meeting, basically. And we went through the episode and talked about it. But as I was thinking about the idea, I was thinking, yeah, but could you make millions on meeting notes, right? And would that make a good title, right? We've been talking a lot among ourselves in my podcast and our partners lately, like people like numbers in the podcast, right? We want to make it a little bit broader of a title. That's for entrepreneurs, they like numbers, by the way. So other audiences might not, but can we make it a broader title so that we're not just saying a very specific thing we talked about in this episode and it's going to exclude other people that we want to attract? So
Right.
I thought about that title, and then as we talked it through, that question came up, like, could you build $1 million business on this? Is this something that you do on the side and it creates a small amount of income?
Right.
And then bring in supporting evidence, like what's the market size for this type of thing? So there's an
Right.
example of how you might execute that.
Yeah, and especially if you can tie it along with some sort of a trend in an industry of some sort, or kind of like a future-looking direction for how the industry is evolving and how people need to think about it as an opportunity. Those kind of things too.
I'm curious, Henry. I think you spoke a little bit about it last week, but and I know for your preparation, you said you tend to spend maybe half hour to 2 hours and researching your guests and preparing for the episodes, and it's kind of like it's not always intentional. I have to prepare for them at 2:00 on Tuesday, but sort of throughout the week before you join them, you're kind of picking up some good information on them so you can conduct a good interview. I've heard some really great questions from you in episodes where it's just really clear that you're paying attention. You bring up things about people's past education, experiences they've had in the past, things like that. Yeah, what do you think about this idea of sort of pre-planning these little stories that you contribute or that you lead the guests to tell?
Yeah, no, I'm going to start. We've talked about this a couple of different times on this mastermind. And so I've started to try to add that to my preparation because it's not something that I've done very well at. In other words, having a story ready or stats or trends or things like that. And so I'm incorporating now that slowly, but trying to incorporate that into my preparation. What I use in preparation is my outline, and I have a template outline that has some placeholder things in it. And so I've added that, stories that are relevant, stats or resources. And so that's how I'm starting to add that to my preparation process. But yeah, like you said, I was just jotting down some notes as you were talking that for me, the vetting, there's two stages. Because mostly I get inbound requests, and I'm for me, it seems like I'm bombarded by them. I might probably get 2 a day, at least 2 to 3 a day that are inbound, either from individuals or through their booking agents, right? Because after you've been around for a while, all of the major booking agents know who you are and they've gotten your email one way or the other, or sometimes they submit on the website. So I'm initially vetting, and I'll spend, it just depends. I might immediately dismiss it because it's just not a fit for me. Or I might take a little bit more time. It might take me 15 minutes or so. If it's like, they did a TED Talk, let me listen to the TED Talk and see if something there catches my attention. Or they have a one sheet, so I'll peruse it and see if it's a fit. And there's certain criteria that I'm trying to tick off to decide. So if they do fit, then I send my standard email for them to schedule the interview. And if they schedule, then like I mentioned before, like you said, at least sometimes it's the day before, but at least a couple of days before, then I will do my preparation, which takes me about an hour. So that at a high level, that's a process. And part of the reason I haven't been doing the preparation too much sooner than that purposely is I'll start to forget. So I want it to be somewhat fresh, what I have uncovered in the preparation. So that's what I do at the high level. You know? But when I prepare, when I'm doing that 1 hour preparation, then I'm plugging in those questions and topics into my outline that serves, as I said, my prompt to me for what to look for and what to research. And then for me, I'm looking, what I've tried to do over the last couple of years certainly is to focus the conversation on one topic as opposed to a free-ranging conversation. That just seems to work better for me, and it seems to be better received by my audience. And it's what now, in retrospect, I see allows me to refer back to my back catalog when I'm working with someone as a coach or whatever the situation might be. I have specific topics that I can say, listen to these 2 episodes because they were on the topic of creating an entity or, liability protection through entity creation. So that's kind of my approach. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we were just talking about a potential guest for your show earlier, and you were even saying, yeah, it depends on, what they might be an expert in, right? I've had too many people talking about SEO lately. And
right,
so
exactly.
I don't want to be redundant about that topic, get to another topic.
Exactly. I keep that in mind. Yeah. That initial vetting, as I've said before, for me, first and foremost is based on what I see or hear, because I certainly don't have anybody on that I can't review some kind of audio or video. That's a requirement. If they don't have that, but the topic seems interesting nonetheless, then I'll reply and say, please send me a link to podcast appearance, video, whatever. That to me is a requirement. And what I'm looking for not only is, are you articulate and can you be on radio? And it also gives me a clue as to whether I need to clarify that you have something better than, a built-in microphone, because I don't like that. But I'm looking for, essentially the big question is, do I want to have a conversation with you? If I don't feel it, if I don't think I'm going to enjoy a conversation with you, me personally, then I usually will pass on that opportunity. It would have to be a really rare situation or opportunity for me to overlook that. I want to have a conversation with you. Then it's like you said, it's a topic that I haven't covered. Again, it seems like, at least for me, I get bombarded with social media experts. There must be 2 million of them because they all want to get on the show, right? I'm exaggerating, but not by much. So I don't do that anymore. I also look at, now that I've developed some affiliate relationships, for example, I have a guy who I refer to and have affiliate relationship for anything web development, websites, those kind of things. So selfishly, I got to look to not create a conflict there. And I've, he and I will do regular episodes on the topic. So I don't need that. It's not a fit for me. So those, that kind of enters into the consideration as well. So yeah, those are kind of the main things I look for to decide, all right, yes, I'm going to invite Ethan to be a guest on the show.
Right. Mark, I'm curious, not to put you on the spot if you don't want to chat, but in terms of preparation for your sessions, how has your process evolved? Since
so
it's
actually changed relatively recently. So I was doing people's journey to success and whatever success is, but to a level of owning their own business or whatever. But I've actually changed it slightly just to give less focus on their story and a little bit more on their expertise. So I'm now breaking it into 4 areas. I go it's the 4 E's is what I say. It's the education, experience, expertise, and future endeavors. I had to fudge the last one. But essentially it's those 4 E's is what I try now to bring in, because what I'm trying to do now is, rather than just tell the story, oh, I did a degree here, I did this job, I did this business, it was starting to get a bit samey for me. So the emphasis for me was to get more on their expertise. So now I'm focusing less on education unless there's an interesting story around there, and less on the experience, although certain key milestones are interesting to touch points on. but really go into their expertise and sort of look into their whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's podcasts. I use a LinkedIn profile just to get a grounding of whereabouts they've been. And sort of just looking at it's like I did someone this afternoon, and I actually reached out to her because she was very impressive on LinkedIn and did a really good story of a narrative on LinkedIn. So I reached out to her, and actually while I was doing research for her, I got an interview with her tomorrow. I actually found the equivalent to Shark Tank. It's called Dragon's Den in the UK, and I didn't realize she went on Shark Tank. And anyway, she, out of 5 people, she got 4 investors wanting to invest in her product. And I watched that this afternoon. I thought to myself, I've got to be really careful because it's unique for someone to get so many investors wanting to invest in her. But equally, I don't want to cover topics that she's probably said 20 or 30 or 100 times. So so the sort of approach for that is within her experience section to sort of say, look, it's a unique situation. Well, I'm going to say tomorrow, it's a unique situation that you got as many investors as you did, rather than go into a product, because the product, it has little relevance to my sort of market, but I can find, as you said, Ethan, a story that she can tell that she might have told 100 times, but try and find an interesting angle on that. So I've sort of trying to mix up the way that I do my podcast, just a little bit to keep me interested, a little bit to keep my audience interested, and sort of drill down into their expertise more.
Yeah, I like the expertise piece of it. I think I'll make a note of trying to highlight that a little bit. Like, what can this desk tell my audience that no one else could, right? Exactly. And just try to at least touch upon it a little bit.
And just going on this person that I'm doing tomorrow, she's run multiple businesses. She's I assume that she's scaled businesses and stepped away because she has started other businesses subsequent. So I think there's an interesting conversation with her is about scaling and about how she got from her sort of in her home well, she wasn't making the product, but doing something relatively basic with manufacturing, into a business that was global, hit lots of retail outlets. So for me, that's going to be an interesting take on her, because she's scaled businesses as well as built them as well. Because I'm a little bit in the same place as Henry is about small businesses. That's where I sort of pitch myself, and especially my coaching is entrepreneur and small businesses. But some of these people have got very large businesses, so I don't want to lose the opportunity with her to sort of talk. Well, okay, mainly my interest is small businesses, but you've scaled businesses, and I think that will be interesting for my audience as well.
Yeah.
I like how you break it up into the 3 or 4 E's. Do you articulate that in the show, or is that just how you break up the content? Or
well, I actually, the first time I did it, I said, look, you've heard my podcast, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to trial something, and it very openly said it was a trial. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of my audience had the same format for quite a few episodes. So I did want to sort of say this is something different. Now, whether it will come out in the subsequent podcast, probably not. But I did flag it on the first one that I did.
Interesting. Yeah, my format, and I think you raise a good point too, that I think if you get to a point where you feel stale with it, you got to change it up, right? Because I think that inevitably is going to start to come forward if you don't. That's obvious. But so my format that I've stuck to, but I'm always thinking about it and always trying to get feedback when I talk to listeners, is I start with the entrepreneurial journey. That's that education, kind of what you've done. And I do similar to you, Mark. Usually I'm reviewing their LinkedIn profile or whatever their bio is to kind of give me, and I'm looking for, as you pointed out, Ethan, thanks for that, kind of something that's unique, or why did you do that? Or, so I'm looking for that. And what I'm trying to bring out, a lot of people, what I find that's a common theme is they studied, psychology in school or art, and now they're an entrepreneur. So I'm always interested in having them share how they made the transition, because my listener, I believe, is inspired by, oh, well, she can do it, I can do that too, right? Or that's interesting. I don't have to get an education in business management to be a successful business owner because Ethan's done it without it, right? So that's the journey part. But I try to stay, I get carried away with that section sometimes. And so I've tried to stay more focused on that only being about 10 minutes. And then I get into the topic at hand. All right, so Mark's now going to share with us, how to improve your LinkedIn profile or whatever the topic might be. And that's the format that I've been working on. I've evolved to over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I'd actually just listened to one of your episodes, prepping for one of our episodes with Matt Wilson, who started this business, basically doing sketches. He does sketches.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, great guy.
Corporate meetings.
Did you have him on your show already? Did you interview him?
Yeah, we had him on our show already. But I'm recollecting listening to your episode. I appreciated that moment where you said, how did you really get started in this? And he had an interesting story of how he got it started. He wasn't looking to start a business. It's kind of funny. He just started sketching out notes during meetings at work, and then all of a sudden, he became
the guy, right, who would do it on the wall, on the whiteboard, and it's interesting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great example of a passion turning into a business by accident, right?
Yeah,
it's not so much intentional. It just happens. It falls out of what you enjoy doing. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you, do you ever do pre-interviews with any of your potential guests to try and extract some of those details?
No, I don't. I don't really have enough time to be able to do a 30-minute prep call with them. I know Deb does, and I know some of you guys do as well. But to be honest, with the other things that I need to do as well for revenue, I just don't have. It would be great if I could spend 30 minutes sort of give people an outline. That's why I try and give people 10 minutes at the start. Right, and I sort of say, have you got a hard close at the end of the hour? And if they have, fine, I'll sort of rattle through my introduction. But if they haven't, I'll spend sort of 5-10 minutes just getting a feel for someone. Like, you can usually tell by the things they're doing, but usually if there's a rapport there and they don't have a hard deadline, mine sometimes go into an hour and a half, a little bit more, because I just had someone recently, and he just said, we're going to have fun here. After 5 minutes of chatting with me. And he was right. He is fantastic. He's, so what I am sort of open to, it's not why I do it, but I'm open to sort of opportunities with people. If there's crossover to collaborate. And this is a guy, it might not be immediate at the moment, but I'm going to do something with him. I don't know what it is. Even if it's a second or third episode, there's going to be, we're going to stay in contact. And I think that's what's nice about podcasting is you get to meet people and you get to sort of build relationships where you wouldn't normally ever get that sort of exposure to that type of person. So no, I don't do pre-calls. Wish I could, but try and give them a sort of few minutes just to, because one of the things I say to them is that I have no angle in this podcast. I'm here to showcase you and your business. I'm not saying anyone else does, but I'm here to showcase you and your business. And usually that puts people off sort of that tension stage, because they think, okay, well, I'm going to talk about me, my business, my expertise. I'll be fine. So even if people aren't that experienced, you can hopefully that quote. I don't know if there's any other sort of techniques that you guys use on sort of that, if you don't do a pre call with them, how to sort of get them in that right state straight away.
Yeah, I think it depends on the guest. Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, at least that's my experience. Some people, I just want to talk to them before the call so I can learn a little bit more about them. Other ones, it's so clear what the goals of the interview is that you don't need to, right? And you've heard them in other media or you've heard them in other places and you know what you're going to get, right? So, but other people that may be a little more obscure, that maybe are doing something groundbreaking or something like that haven't really done a lot of media, that you haven't been able to experience them, that's when I usually try and do the call. And it's almost like it's a network building thing, especially if it depends on what the priority of that relationship is too, beyond just doing the interview. I mean, you can treat that as an opportunity, almost like a pre-interview can set up a much stronger networking relationship with someone too. So there's other objectives depending on what you're trying to do. Yeah.
I was just, I'll bring back, I know Henry had something to say.
go ahead.
That episode was with William Warren. It wasn't with Matt Wilson.
Okay,
that was
makes
the name of that fellow. He started a business called The
I
Sketch
forget people's
Effect.
names, and that didn't sound quite right.
At least you have the excuse for that one. That was definitely the wrong name. But yeah, did you have something to say, Henry?
Yeah, it's just on pre-interviews.
I
I don't do them for a couple of different reasons. However, I'll come back to what Rob said. Same for me, Mark. I can't add yet another step to the process. I'm already at 5 hours per episode. Not all me. Some of it is my assistant. So I got to be careful there. But I also think that what I don't want to do in a pre-interview is have a conversation there that doesn't get on tape, right? I don't want it to. I want that to be some genuineness to the interaction, that it's new and that it's fresh. So I balance that. That's the argument that I've heard a lot of people make for not preparing at all. Is they just want to have a fresh conversation. That doesn't work completely for me. But to Rob's point, if it's somebody, and I need to do more of this because I'm fortunate that I get inbound from people who have some media savviness. They've been on other shows. They've done YouTube. They've done a TED Talk, whatever the case might be. But I also like to get, and I've had before, the real local business owner that I've met through the Chamber of Commerce. When that's the case, I have done a pre-interview, to your point, Rob, and to Mark's, to kind of make them at ease because they've never done anything like this. Mm-hmm. And I've done that. I haven't done it here recently because of COVID and because of my move. I'll lend them a microphone. I'll do a pre-interview call to check out all of the equipment because, inevitably that takes 15 minutes because they've never done it before. I set them at ease. It helps them to feel like they've practiced a little bit. And so that's when I will do a pre-interview. But then going back to your point, Mark, to set the tone, what I do, I also try to do the 5 minutes or so of chatting, conscious of the 1 hour that I've booked with them. And I walk through, I say, Mark, here's what we're going to do today. Let me walk you through the flow. And so I'll walk them through the flow at a high level. And do you have any questions on that? Was there anything in the outline that you had an issue with or you wanted to change? So that's kind of when I set them on ease of how this is going to work. So anyway, I thought I'd add that to it.
Yeah. And I'm reflecting on the way that, so we have 2 hosts, Chris and I. And as I reflect upon it, he maybe plays one role and I play another that could be combined. So he's the one that's saying, okay, so here's, he's got a checklist, did you turn off your phone? Here's this, let me tell you about this. This is what's going to happen. And then going through, this is how our episodes are structured. We're going to launch off with this kind of a question. At the end, you'll have time to pitch your thing. And, just giving an outline. So that helps with the comfort level, I think. And then the one thing that came immediately to my mind about making that, I guess what I call rapport, is I try to actually make a joke or two before we start. But that's my personality. It might not be everybody's.
So you break the ice sometimes.
Yeah. Like literally in my mind, I can remember just say something that we can all laugh at, or, or say something to show what the personality of this conversation is going to be. Because if it's just Chris talking about this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this
seems very formal, very structured, seems very regimented.
Yeah, and then we jump right in and, all of a sudden we start making fun of our guest or something, right? It's just going to be, they're just going to feel weird. But if beforehand I make a little fun of Chris, he makes a little fun of me, maybe then, we say a little something funny that involves them and brings them into it. So for me, I think that humor plays a big role in at least setting the tone. Mm-hmm. Like, what kind of conversation are you going to have with this person? And I think that could be done outside of humor as well. You could set the tone up front and just be like, okay, so let's have a very focused and you're very focused, right? Or, you could have a different tone, but if you go into that tone a little bit before you start, just to give them a sense of how it's going to be when you start talking.
I agree. I think that's what I'm trying to accomplish when I walk through. and I iterate multiple times, we're just going to have a conversation. So, and in fact, I make a point, we're not going to get through all these questions that I've outlined here. Those were just placeholders as I was doing the research, but we can go off on tangents. That's perfectly okay. So I guess I'm kind of doing that as I walk through the overview to set that tone and expectation, with the big focus being on, this is not going to be scripted, because that's the thing that I have a challenge with, because I send people this outline that sometimes can be 2-3 pages. It feels like, oh, this is going to be question, answer. And so I make sure to explain the process and that. And so I've had only maybe one guest that I can think of that it sounded like she had taken that outline and written down her answers and was starting to read them verbatim. Right. And I caught on pretty early on. And so I started asking questions that weren't on that list, not to catch her, but to make it more of a conversation than just reading off the script. I do want to come back to when we get a moment about Mark's comment about, I don't have an angle here, because that's an interesting point on, and maybe we can table this for a future time, that role that we play, because I do bring to it sometimes an angle. What I mean by that is I sometimes, Mark, will take the angle of I'm skeptical of what you are going to pitch to me today in part. So sometimes I do take that angle. I do say, even in my page that helps people understand the process, that this is a friendly interview. However, it's not just a commercial for your product or service. If it's someone who does something, have something to offer, and a lot of times that is the case of people who come on my show. So I do think it's my role to play that skeptical audience that's thinking, can you really do that in small business? Is that really done? That kind of thing.
Yeah,
so I'm curious as your thoughts on that, Mark.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. My sort of podcast and what I want to achieve is a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but I still feel that people who come on my podcast, yes, some have a particular thing they want to sell, and usually that comes up pretty quickly if they are looking just to talk about a book or something like that. And I'm for a little bit more holistic approach of the people. It's interesting you said about being a skeptical about their business. I've had a couple of times where I've interviewed one guy. I won't mention his name. I can't remember his name, but one guy was flipping land in Arizona. Right. And I when I did the research, I was really like 50-50 whether to take, but I thought, okay, I'll just give him a chance. Anyway, it was really interesting because he's buying land outside of Arizona, in some cases sitting on it for 2 years and then selling it for double the price or something like that, because he was saying that, I think it was Arizona is building up so much. Atlanta as well is another one, which is really building up of communities and growing a larger city. And I was all for it. I was like, look, you've got something unique. We can't really do it in the UK because we don't have that amount of land.
Right.
But I see your sort of, and then on the podcast, he said, I think you should invest in me and buy land in Arizona, where it was. Nice. Immediately, I just thought, well, this is not going to go very far. I'm like, I just felt it was a totally, the wrong way to approach my podcast or podcasting is literally doing a pitch to me. Like, you can pitch to the audience. I get that. Sure. That's kind of what they're there. But I just thought, oh, this is not going well from my point of view. And so I'm just going to finish it as quickly as possible. So for me, like, I rarely get to that point where I'm like, well, because usually if a business is successful or earns a decent revenue, it's usually because there's a need. So even if it's something you're not really relatable to, you can, I feel I can at least see where that niche is that they've been able to corner. Sure. So I get what you're saying. I suppose the people that, because I actually did an exercise inspired by you guys on my website to list all of my podcasts after a previous episode that we talked about. and my website has not been as friendly as perhaps yours, Henry, has been. But it was actually interesting to break down the different areas that I've actually done my podcast in. So like marketing, there's
Topics,
a lot
yeah.
of marketers, there's a lot of coaches.
Absolutely.
And it was just an interesting sort of exercise to actually sit there and think, well, actually, what can I do that's different? What can I do that I haven't done before that might be interesting? So just a big shout out to you guys. It was a really worthwhile exercise.
How many episodes are you at now?
So I've done 279 episodes with probably about 90 guests, 90 guests.
Yeah, it's a lot of content, a lot of catalog. I'm always thinking, as I said, how does this fit into what I have already done? Now, that doesn't mean I won't repeat a topic. I mean, I have to, right? I mean, at this point, but how recently have I done it? And can I find a different angle on this same topic? I've had multiple CPAs or bookkeepers, but so the question is, can I get a different angle on it out of that same topic? And so that's what I look at. I can't possibly get another angle out of online marketing, generally speaking. Right? So that's why I won't do that anymore, because there's I had so many of those guests early on, but it seems like there's a million of them out there, right? But yeah, so those are good insights.
Just something
what's your thought on like keynote speakers and coaches? Because I seem to be inundated. They do other things, but they're big on that area.
To me, selfishly, if it's a small business coach, then I got to think, man, this better be a compelling topic, or I'm cannibalizing my own opportunity to position myself as the coach, right? I know that sounds selfish, but the show is there to serve me and what I offer, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm only going to bring on another small business coach if it's either someone I know and they have a particular topic or an area of expertise, then I might bring them on. And then what was the other part you asked, Mark, or if what?
The keynote speakers. I've got bored asking, what do you do in COVID as your keynote speaker? I am so bored of that question.
Yeah.
I just only, if they're keynote speakers.
They're a keynote speaker because on a particular subject? Or?
Yeah, on a subject. It's, the last one I did, I just released this week, Jeff Haddon. I don't know if any of you guys know Jeff Haddon. He's a Inc. magazine editor. He's prolific on social media with business content, and that was the last. So that's like 4 weeks ago. That's the last person that I asked about keynote speaking, because I was just like, they go, oh yeah, it's been tough. It's hard. Hopefully it'll pick up, and I just now brush over that and never talk about that at the moment.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I haven't. I do have a gentleman coming on soon that, and I've had this topic before about how to use speaking, to grow your business. Yet he has an interesting angle, and so that caught my attention. But yeah, that's the only thought I have there.
Yeah, because usually keynote speakers are usually either book authors or they're successful,
or former CEO. Or
yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah,
they're successful people in other ways. The keynote speaking is just how they present what they're all about, right?
Yeah, and it's a bit of cash cow, isn't it? That's the other reason I don't ask too.
Well, and also another question asking: are they paid keynote speakers, or do they do it? On a pro bono thing. That'll also draw a line for you a little bit, because if they're paid speakers, they're probably not going to share that much with you about that topic, because that's what they're getting paid for. Mm-hmm. So
good point.
So that's the thing you gotta look out for the public speakers, unless they're coming to you about some solid topic that they're going to talk about, and not just I would think a keynote speaker would either have a book or they would have something else that they're trying to promote, else they wouldn't be looking to come on a podcast.
Yeah. With Jeff, I literally, because I've enjoyed his content for some time and read his book, and so I wasn't a fanboy, but I was just like, no, this actually is going to be interesting, and it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think so I'm a little bit like you, Henry. I have all the sort of suppliers. They send me people now, and I get reached out on LinkedIn occasionally for people wanting to be on my podcast. But how do you guys approach people that have whether it's revenue, whether it's earnings, whether it's wealth, whether it's success, how do you target people outside of the people who are on the circuit? How do you get to the people that are sort of maybe a little bit more interesting, maybe higher revenues or higher earnings, just to sort of get a variety of different people?
So I'll go first. So for me, the last part I'll address first. I don't necessarily look for the higher earnings or revenue because that's not my audience. And so, and again, from day one, the purpose and part of what inspired me to start the show was my challenge with reconciling reading about the unicorns and how do I apply that to my small business. You know, I'm a huge fan of Richard Branson, and I've read all his stuff, but it's hard to translate what he's done with Virgin America to my little business. Yeah, I always struggled with that. So I don't necessarily look to bring on those people. What I try to do is bring on other small business owners like me who have had success. And the challenge is, going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, those people don't have media savviness. They don't get interviewed. They're not comfortable talking about this kind of stuff. But when I've been successful, I've met them through my local chamber of commerce or in my community and business network. And I'll say, have you ever thought about maybe being on the show? And so we'll have a conversation. It takes a lot more nurturing, like I explained earlier, but that's what I'm looking for more so, Mark, just for me, for my show, than the bigger revenues. I'm looking for that typical small business owner.
Sorry to cut across you. It's like I reached out to Michael Gerber, who wrote the and loved the book and so was a big fan.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Out to his,
who's not? I mean, that's the number one recommended book on my show, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I reached out to his team and they came back and they said, he only makes appearances for paid, so he charges £5,000 or $5,000 per interview. I was just like, well,
wow.
Is there something you can do for me, because I'm a big fan and really would like him on my podcast? Oh, well, we can drop it down to $3,000. And still it was like, well, no, thank you. I'm not like, this is.
Well, good for you for being persistent and not taking the $5.
Well, that's a pretty hefty discount.
It is, isn't it?
It's like I've reached out to a couple of authors recently, and I'm getting a lot of that sort of charges, quite a lot of money. Things from like $2,500 to $5,000 per interview, and that's just not viable for me. And I don't know if because someone outside of podcasting sort of said you should tap up I'm getting this right, the sort of the PR people, the branding people behind the person. And I think that's what I ended up getting with Michael Gerber, was actually one of his sort of publicists. But yeah, so he's sort of nugget was, well, if you get in with the publicizers, the people who publicize them, like interview them as well, but they might be able to get you into the sort of the authors, the top layer authors and things like that. But I haven't had a chance to really explore that as a way to sort of get past the gatekeeper.
Right. Yeah, I have a limited experience there because I just haven't gone after those people. Not that I would get them, but I just haven't done so.
And that's going to be of limited benefit to you, depending on what the relationship would be anyway, because a lot of people that do a lot of interviews like that, they don't share it with their network necessarily. And if you're paying for it, yeah, it's just a risk for you. I don't know that you would get the value that you think that you might get out of it, and they may not understand the dynamic of that as well when they're trying to get people to pay to have them on your show, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine though. You imagine how many inbound requests Seth Godin gets. I have to imagine it's thousands a week.
Yeah, and actually that's what he's doing. He's using a financial model to be a filter against all those requests, right?
Yeah. I can give a couple of insights, maybe a little bit different because of our format or our situation, but I just reach out to any, like, it's like if I'm reading a book and I go, this is interesting. I was, oh, how could I contact that person? I just reach out to anybody and everybody that seems interesting, really. If I have a moment, I can't do it all the time, but let me invite this person. Let me invite this person on the podcast.
And if you do it enough time, you get enough hits. Is that your thought?
I think that's all. Well, I guess I'll follow up and just say, now, one of the benefits of our show is that it's not your typical format.
Right.
But I just, explained to Henry this, I'm going to refer probably a guest to him, which is not coming on our show because it's not a typical, it's not an interview format, at least, and he wants to do that. But we're growing, our audience is growing. We doubled our audience in the past month, but we've had a smaller audience. So how do I sell it to people, right? And I think sell it to this, that this is something that the guests enjoy. So we actually get testimonials from our guests. We stopped doing it because we maybe don't need it as much. But when we first started out, after the show was finished, we'd say, hey, what would you say to another guest that would consider coming on the Run With It podcast? And consistently we get the same feedback over and over. Oh, this was so fun. Like, it's not your typical thing. I'm so tired of saying the same thing over and over again. Now I want to start this business. Like, great, definitely do it. So we would get that kind of a thing. And then that way we could say, our guests really love coming on this show. Check out this testimonial or handful of testimonials from other people who want to be on there, so that people know it's not just a thing that they're doing because they have to, oh, I got to go out there and promote my thing. Oh no, actually, This is gonna be enjoyable. I'm gonna go hang out with Mark Hayward for a little bit. He's a cool guy, and this is gonna be fun. So you can sell it. I don't know how much the numbers game plays in your situation, but it has played in ours. You could sell it as just like, this is going to be enjoyable for you, to do this.
Yeah, and for me, something I think I've said before, but one of the things that I'm trying to introduce is the people that I speak to. I'm sort of now saying, is there anyone else in your network that you think would enjoy an interview with by me? And that has had a mixed response, because sometimes some people are very enthusiastic and then you never hear from them again, sort of thing. A couple of people have come up with some really interesting people that are in their network, which has proved quite fruitful. But I'm finding once you get to that sort of level, if you're sort of reaching out to one outside of them, sometimes they're a little bit samey. There's a woman that I had as an NLP coach, and she suggested another NLP coach, and I'm kind of thinking that's probably a little bit of overkill for my audience. But you sometimes get something interesting from these people, like other people that might be interested in being on your podcast.
Yeah, another thing too, just to go back on getting that feedback from the guests about what they liked about being on the show. Now that I know what appeals to my guests, I can think more about what guest would this appeal to, as opposed to what guest do I want, and then who among the guests that this would appeal to would I want, right? Who would really, like, I have a friend who just launched he just raised a round of like $25 million of investment. And I've invited him to come on the show a couple of times. He's just a heads down programmer, and, he's not necessarily looking to talk about a business idea. He probably not even trying not to think about them. And some people are like that. So who can I invite that would just have a blast, like chatting about a business idea? That's what people enjoy about it. They enjoy that it's unique. And let me highlight that and think who's going to fit among the people that I would be interested in.
Hey, Ethan, we're almost at the top of the hour. You want to tell us what happens next week?
Yeah, well, before we're done, I just want to keep you guys on for maybe like 15 minutes. I got a land deal in Florida I want to pitch to you. I think it'd be great.
I've got extra money laying around,
investors,
and I'm in Florida, so
I've been waiting to say that ever since it came up.
You should have said it at the beginning to set the tone. Now it's too late.
Does it have any crocodiles or alligators on the land? Because that's
sure it does.
That's what makes it more valuable.
There's alligators in my subdivision ponds.
All right. Okay. So, next week we'll be bringing a guest on board. We don't have it finalized yet, but we'll have a guest for next week, and we'll see you then. So for the people that are online, there are a couple people I saw watching on streaming. I didn't get any questions though, but yeah, you can join us next week. And we're here every week. We have a guest every week, and then we alternate discussing what they talked about. And you can come on for a few free sessions, and after a while, if you want to become a member and join all of our sessions, you can also do that. So we're the Business Podcast Mastermind. Anything else you guys wanted to say in closing?
No, good conversation.
No,
Thanks for the inputs.
Yeah.
All right.
Rob, did you see that Elon Musk was on Clubhouse?
Clubhouse.
I don't know if that was actually true or whether that was.
Yeah.
Just
No, that's what happened last night, and it about took Clubhouse down.
Yeah, well, the funny thing was, I just kept on getting buzzed on my notifications on Clubhouse. A group that was set up pre-Elon Musk joining Clubhouse at whatever it was, 10 o'clock PST.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened. He did an interview of the CEO of the Robinhood stock buying app.
Right.
That's what the topic
that
was.
was all about. But I was just chuckling to myself, just like there was a group already set up that Elon Musk was going to be here. I was like,
Yep. And then after that session happened, a bunch of other sessions spun out of it,
right,
and basically went on. Actually, I think they're still going on. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I dip in and dip out at the moment. I can't spend much time on there, but yeah, no, it's interesting.
Well, and now there's talk about, well, is Clubhouse gonna get bigger than Facebook now? That's the big talk now.
Well, let's wait and see.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I just wanted to chuck that in.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see you all guys next week.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye.